All right, let's dive into this. You wanted to learn about blockchain. We've got a ton of material here, excerpts from all sorts of documents about blockchain, its features and applications, like really the whole deal.
It's pretty amazing stuff. It could totally change the way we think about trust and transactions. Seriously.
Yeah, even just skimming this stuff, I was struck by how often blockchain is connected to decentralization. What's that all about? And why is it such a big deal?
Okay, so when we say decentralized, we're saying that blockchain doesn't depend on one single authority, like a bank or the government, to work. Instead, it's spread out over a whole network of computers. Everyone on that network has access to the same information. That's different from how most things work today.
Gotcha. I'm starting to get why people are so into this. But I'll be honest, the whole cryptography thing still seems kind of mysterious to me.
It's complicated for sure, but basically, cryptography is used to keep the blockchain safe. By turning information into this code that's super hard to crack, it's like a digital lock. But instead of needing a key, you've got this crazy math algorithm. It makes it almost impossible to mess with the data on the blockchain.
So if anyone tries to cheat the system, everyone would know.
Yeah, and that's why blockchain is considered so secure. It's not just about one lock, it's a bunch of computers constantly checking each other's info.
That's wild. Now, these sources mention other features too, like immutability and transparency. What makes those important?
Well, immutability means that after a transaction is on the blockchain, it can't be changed or deleted. It's like a permanent record. This is why blockchain is so cool for things like supply chains or tracking who owns what. It's a record you can trust.
So it's like you've always got the real history no matter what.
You got it. And then there's transparency. Every transaction on the blockchain is visible to everyone on the network. Personal info can be kept private, but the fact that the transaction happened is public. This keeps people honest, makes it way harder to get away with shady stuff.
Okay, I'm getting a clear picture now. Before we get into all the potential uses, I'm curious. One of these articles mentions smart contracts. What are those and how do they fit into this?
So smart contracts are like these agreements written in code that automatically happen, like a vending machine. But instead of snacks, it's carrying out the terms of a contract when certain things happen.
So you don't need lawyers to oversee everything. The blockchain does it.
Exactly. And this is a big deal for lots of different industries. Take supply chains, for example. One of your sources talked about how blockchain can track where a product goes from the start to the consumer.
Yeah, that stood out to me too.
Hmm.
Because it's not just about knowing where something comes from, it's about ethical stuff, right?
Right.
Like how it was made.
Exactly. With blockchain, you could see things like if workers were treated fairly, if it's environmentally friendly, even if specific manufacturing rules were followed. Every step is recorded, so it's much harder for shady businesses to get away with anything.
That kind of transparency would be huge.
Yeah.
For people who want to shop ethically, but don't know what's really going on.
It gives power to the consumer and keeps businesses in check. And it goes way beyond just tracking products.
One of the articles mentioned using it for healthcare, like managing patient records. What do you think about that?
It's got a ton of potential. Think about how scattered health data is now. Records are all over the place, different doctors, hospitals, insurance companies. It's a mess for patients to keep track of, let alone share securely.
And not being able to share that info easily can affect people's care.
For sure. With blockchain, each patient could have their own secure record that they control. They could decide which healthcare providers can see it, make sure everyone involved has the latest info.
So it's not just efficiency, it's better healthcare too.
That's it. And don't forget medical research. With patients' permission, their data could be shared on the blockchain without names. This would help researchers learn about diseases and develop new treatments much faster.
That's pretty amazing. Every new use we talk about makes the impact of blockchain seem even bigger. But what about finance? That's where it started, right?
Yeah, with things like Bitcoin and Ethereum. But it's not just about digital money.
One source talked about how blockchain could make sending money across borders faster and cheaper. How does that work?
So usually international transfers involve a whole bunch of banks and everyone takes a cut, slows things down. But blockchain cuts out the middlemen so you can send money directly to another person.
But it's about making things easier and cheaper.
You got it. It's a big deal for global businesses and even just people sending money to family overseas.
It seems almost too good to be true. There must be some problems with it too, right?
Right, there are definitely challenges. Like any new tech.
One of the big ones that came up in these articles was scalability. Can blockchain really handle tons of transactions at once?
Yeah, that's a key issue. Making sure these networks can handle that load without slowing down. That's something developers are working on.
Makes sense. So what about the energy use?
Hmm.
A couple of these sources mentioned that blockchain can be pretty energy intensive,
Yeah.
not exactly eco-friendly.
That's a valid concern, especially as blockchain grows. The computing power needed can be a lot, but there are folks working on more sustainable approaches, like using different algorithms that require less energy.
That's good to hear. Then there's the whole regulatory landscape. It seems like governments are still trying to figure out how to deal with blockchain.
Yeah, regulation is definitely catching up. It's a new area, so governments are still figuring out how to approach it, how to balance innovation with consumer protection,
Right.
and prevent any illegal stuff.
Makes sense. So we've talked about the good, the challenges. What's the overall impact? One article called it potentially revolutionary. What do you think?
It's got huge potential, but it's still early. It's like the internet in the 90s. No one knew how it would change things. Same with blockchain. We're just starting to see the possibilities.
Okay, I see what you mean. We talked about all these applications like in finance and healthcare, but one that really stuck with me was voting. Using blockchain to make elections more secure and transparent.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because theoretically, blockchain could make it much harder to tamper with votes. Every vote would be recorded on an immutable ledger.
That could really increase trust in elections, especially with all the concerns about voter fraud these days.
Right, it could address those concerns. But there are logistical challenges, like making sure everyone has access to the technology and guaranteeing the privacy of voters while keeping things transparent.
So it's not a simple fix, but it shows how blockchain could address some big problems we face.
Definitely. It's not a silver bullet, but it's a powerful tool. And as we learn more, as the tech develops, who knows what we'll be able to do with it?
That's a great note to end on. It's clear blockchain has the potential to really shake things up in all sorts of areas.
Absolutely. It's an exciting time to see how this technology will unfold and how it'll shape our world in the years to come.
Okay, so we've covered a lot, the good, the not so good. But what about the overall impact on governments that really stood out in these sources?
Oh, absolutely. That's huge. Blockchain could completely change how we think about governments, especially when it comes to transparency and accountability.
One article even said something like, a new era of transparent governance. That's a pretty big claim. What would that even look like?
Well, think about this. All government data, from budgets and spending to voting results, even what happens in legislative meetings, all recorded on a public blockchain.
So no more digging through paperwork or filing those Freedom of Information Act requests. Citizens just see it all.
Yeah, exactly. That level of transparency has never been possible before, not just for citizens, but journalists, researchers, even other government agencies.
Wow, that could really change how we hold elected officials accountable and cut down on corruption. But how would we even do that? Implementing it on a national scale seems massive.
Oh, it would be complex, for sure. It would take collaboration between tech people, policymakers, and all sorts of government agencies. But there are already some pilot projects and initiatives happening around the world, testing out how to use blockchain for government services and data management.
One source mentioned Estonia. They've been ahead of the curve when it comes to using tech in government. Are they doing anything with blockchain?
Yeah, they've been using it for things like securing electronic health records, managing land registries, even verifying digital documents.
This is not just theory, they're actual real-world examples.
Right, and they're not the only ones. Dubai, Singapore, Switzerland, they're all experimenting with blockchain for different government stuff.
So it's happening. But what challenges still need to be figured out?
Well, scalability is still a big one. Government systems handle a ton of data and transactions. Making sure blockchain networks can keep up with that without slowing down is key.
And security is super important too, especially with sensitive government information.
Well, definitely. Any system used by the government has to be super secure and resistant to cyber attacks.
So we've explored a lot in this deep dive, from the technical stuff to the potential to transform industries and even how governments work.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey.
What's the one thing you hope listeners take away from all of this?
I think the biggest takeaway is that blockchain is still young. It's always changing, and we're just starting to understand its full impact.
So while there are challenges, there's also this incredible potential for blockchain to make things better.
Exactly. It's up to all of us to stay informed, have these conversations, and help shape the future of this technology for the better.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks so much for sharing your knowledge with us today, and to all of you listening, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into blockchain. Until next time, keep exploring.